Shema Israel. Hope you enjoy this next study. My name's Dee. This is my wife, Millie.
So if you like what you see, subscribe and hit the notification bell. And if you wish to reach out to us, you can email us at devotedtoyah@gmail.com.
So, but now we go to this other greater. And it seems, it's weird. It's like, what does this mean? It says, but he who is least in the kingdom of heaven. The other time we heard this is in Matthew chapter 5. We should look into to see if this word least is the same as, I think it's verse 19, Matthew 5:19, where it says, those who do the least of these commandments and teach men to do so, do likewise, they will be great in the kingdom. But those who don't do the least of these commandments and teach men also not to do the least of these commandments, these men will be least in the kingdom. I don't remember, but we could probably take a quick pause to see if the words are the same, just for fun. Okay, so the word here in Matthew 11, verse 11, but it says, but he who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than John. Okay, the word least here is mikros. Okay, G3398. And this word does not show up in Matthew chapter 5, verse 19. What word do we have in Matthew 5:19, D-Rail?
G1646, which is, if I say it right, elakistos.
Elakistos. And won't you read off some of the definitions of that? Or tell me what it is. What's the number again? G what?
G1646.
So we can have it on the screen here. Okay. So this is in Matthew 5. The definitions seem the same, but there is a small distinction. Here's G1646, which is found in Matthew 5:19. And what does the verse say? Just for refreshers, for people coming in right now. It says, whoever therefore shall break one of the least commandments, okay? In other words, the commandments that seem the least important, okay, that are not as a high priority, which there are different commandments with different levels of priority, okay? Like, thou shalt not murder is high on the list. All right, thou shalt not commit idolatry. Thou shalt not worship false gods and idols. That's high on the list. Thou shalt not drink blood and things like that. That's high on the list, okay? I don't know. I'm not sure what will be considered least on the list. Probably wearing tassels, okay? Tassels are to be a reminder. Fringes are a reminder for us to keep the commandments, okay? The surrounding story around that is pretty deep. You know, there was a guy that was murdered for not keeping the Sabbath. He was stoned to death in the wilderness for not keeping the Sabbath. So anyway, there are some commandments that have a high priority with a high level of consequences if you don't obey them. And then there are others that don't have as a severe, you know, like certain commandments that if you don't obey them or if you disobey them, you get the death penalty, things like that. High priority versus low priority, right? So whoever shall break one of the least commandments and shall teach men to do the same, he shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever shall do the least of these commandments and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. So I remember this question came up, a Christian, and I never got back to them. Me and some Christian friends from college were going over this passage because what it seemed like was, oh, so then even if I don't obey some of these commandments, I could still be saved. So it was like, it was along the lines of like how close, you know, there's still a get out of jail free card for me. You know, this is not me not embracing the law of Moses like you do, Brother D, isn't going to prevent me from being saved. That was kind of along the lines. And then I was just like, I didn't know how to answer this question, because from here we did go to Matthew 11:11 in this verse. I remember we did this conversation, and I never got back to them because I didn't know what to make of it, because I knew something in my spirit didn't seem right. Something in my spirit was telling me this word least here is not the same as that word. It's got to be something different. And so today we've seen that it is a different word. Again, this is a devotional reading, a devotional study. This is not a deep, I haven't prepared to do this. This wasn't prepared. We just went here today, okay? But from what we do see, Derail is helping us to see that there's two different words. G1646 was used in Matthew 5:19. But G3398 is the word that's used here in Matthew 11:11. What's the difference? I mean, there's got to be a difference, but off the surface, it seems very minuscule. It seems very subtle. So let's do the Matthew 5:19 word. Here's some of the definitions: smallest and least. What's the other word? Small or little. Okay. So small, they both have smallest. Okay, this one says smallest. The other one says small. Okay. I guess this one is really small. All right. Least versus little. Matthew 11:11 is the little. Okay, so one has to do with size, one has to do with, I don't know, something else. I'm not sure. The second definition is in size. So smallest or least in size. Matthew 11:11 is small or little of size, hence of stature, of length. It's almost the same, bro.
Yeah.
The next definition, in amount or management of affairs. That's the Matthew 5:19. In amount of management of affairs. Matthew 11:11. Of space, of age, less by birth, younger. Matthew 5:19. In importance, what is the least moment? Or D, in authority of commandments. In the estimation of men, of persons, in rank and excellence of persons. Going back to Matthew 11:11, it says, of time, short, brief, a little while, how little, of quantity, number, amount, of rank, or influence. I'm just going to take a shot at this. I believe that this verse here, Matthew 5:19, I am going to believe that this least here, it says, whoever therefore shall break one of the least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. I will say that this passage doesn't seem to be addressing the intention of the heart. I'll be honest. It doesn't seem to be addressing the intention of the heart. It is possible that even teachers are ignorant and sincerely ignorant to things. Are they held to a higher responsibility? Yes, they are held to a higher responsibility, and their consequences can tend to be more severe than the average person. Because somebody who is a teacher should know, okay? They should know you're to teach everybody everything from the law. You're not to be teaching anybody bits and pieces and like a buffet what you want to choose. That is a violation. That is the commandment that says, thou shalt not take away from these commandments nor add to them, right? So if somebody is teaching people not to do certain commandments, they're taking away from the word of God. And there is a big consequence for that. One of the consequences is to be thrown into the lake of fire. You will burn the lake of fire. You will be judged. You will be considered wicked. You will be considered a false teacher, a heretic, false prophet, things like that, right? But perhaps there is that little crack in the system where there is mercy for sins of ignorance, and there are people who may get through the cracks of the system by Yahuwah's grace and mercy. So maybe this passage is talking about that. The other interpretation, the initial interpretation I have for this verse is that the least here is at the bottom of the list. And those at the bottom of the list of heaven, this is what I initially said, but I'm having some issues with it in my own mind, that the least in the kingdom of heaven is the lake of fire. So then that would beg the question, so is the lake of fire in the kingdom of heaven? The only way that my theory can work is if I can conclude with scripture that the lake of fire is actually in the kingdom of heaven. If the lake of fire is outside of the kingdom of heaven, then my theory that people here who are going to be called least in the kingdom of heaven being in the lake of fire is wrong. So that's something that I would like to look further into, to conclude, to kind of brush up on. So I'm even admitting right now, I'm still working on this. It's just a theory. If I'm gonna say this one more time, just for clarity, if the lake of fire is not considered to be part of the kingdom of heaven, then I cannot say that this passage is saying that people will be in hell who break and teach men to not obey the least commandments. It seems like this verse would be giving a little license, a little get out of jail free card, because they focused on the weightier matters. It may allow them to slip and still get into the kingdom of heaven, but they will be at the bottom of the list as far as their ranking and their reward and their status, right? It's not going to be a good thing. Their rewards are going to be a little less. Because they disregarded the law as a whole, even as ignoring the smallest commandments. So this is something I'm willing to look into. But on the surface level, this word least here is different than what is being spoken of in Matthew 11:11. It says, "But he who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than John." What does this mean? The idea that I have right now off the top of my head is the only ways that we are better than John is the fact that we have not physically seen the Messiah. We have not physically touched him like John the Baptist was able to touch him. John immersed him in water. John was able to interact with this guy. John had a meal with Yahusha. Okay, John physically saw him. John physically saw the miracles and verbally witnessed his testimony of the healings and the miracles that he did. While those of us living in the year 2020 or whatever afterwards, we're believing even though we have not seen. We have faith. So because we have faith, we are greater than those we are greater because we believe and we have not seen, while those who saw believed because they saw. Not saying that John wouldn't have believed if he didn't see, but that's the only way I can say that those of us in the future, or those who are in the lower ranking in the kingdom of heaven, those who are saved, are better than John. It's only because we believed by faith rather than believing by seeing. Anyway, I'm just giving it a shot. But